here we go. Okay. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So welcome, everyone. My name is Michelle, like I just said. We're going to talk tonight about the policy plan update that is going on at the county. And specifically, we're going to talk about the equity section and how we're incorporating or thinking about incorporating equity into the policy plan moving forward and into all the elements. And I hope we can have a discussion about that either tonight, or if you have questions or want to talk later, my contact information will be available, and I'm happy to have discussions with anyone who would like to join in. And so we'll just briefly go over what we're doing, what the comp plan is, what the comprehensive plan is, our timeline, and then we'll dig in a little bit to the equity and the policy plan just as a general idea. And then we'll have, most of the time tonight is for any questions and discussion and ideas. And so just to be clear, this project is ongoing. The board authorized this policy plan amendment, and the goals are, as you see outlined. They the board directed staff to review, update, and streamline the existing policy plan elements, add new elements as needed, and ensure the policy plan is in alignment with the countywide strategic plan, the one Fairfax policy, that's the one we work with the most, and other recently adopted policies and initiatives. And so right now we're in phase one. We're working on the all of the sections that you see there: the preface, land use, transportation, environment, parks, recreation, equity, community health, and human services. Equity and community health are new to the policy plan. The policy plan as a whole hasn't been updated for at least 30 years. There've been part and parcel updates over time. And that's really how our comp plan in Fairfax County gets updated, is in little pieces over time. I would note the preface sounds a little boring. It's just the introduction to the plan, but that's where the land use vision lives. And so, so that's an interesting discussion. I know at the end of the presentation, I have a list of upcoming meetings, and there's an introduction meeting happening at the end of this month, and that's where the land use vision gets discussed. And so it's a little deceptive just calling it the preface, because it's really the land use vision for the county. And then phase two would be the rest of the elements of the policy plan: housing, economic development, heritage resources, the revitalization section, and then the visual and performing arts section. So just like the 10,000 foot view here is, here's an overview on the difference between the comp plan, which is what we're talking about tonight, and the county's, like, the regulatory documents, to kind of help frame the work that we're doing. So the comp plan is a guide that sets the land use vision for the county, and it's implemented through the processes here at the county, through development review of applications and zoning applications that come into the county. The policy plan includes the goals, objectives, and policies to carry out this vision. They provide the general direction of the plan. The objectives include statements of how to achieve those goals, and finally the policies include like specific approaches for pursuing the objective. The policy plan is countywide. It's important to ensure that the policies developed are pretty general and flexible enough to apply across the county, but also targeted enough to address the topic that we're focused on. Kind of coming a level down from the policy plan are the area plan volumes of the comp plan. That's not something we're updating through this process right now. That comes later, after the policy plan gets updated. The area plan volumes, they provide specific guidance and recommendations to specific areas within the county for development, pertaining to development, to ensure that the development is addressing very area-specific and site-specific considerations. It's necessary in such a big county that we live in. The needs of Centerville versus Tyson's versus Lorton are all different. And so area plans speak to those specific areas. Those all put the policy plan into action in those specific areas. And then going down even further, we have the zoning code or the zoning ordinance, which is a regulatory document. It applies to all structures, and the purpose of zoning codes in general are to promote the health, safety, and welfare of the public and to implement the comp plan. And finally, you'll hear sometimes talk about the PFM, the Public Facilities Manual, which is a very specific document. So that's very at the ground level. That provides pretty specific like engineering guidelines for the development and construction of new development. And we're talking like, width of sidewalks or materials or types of streetlights, et cetera. So the PFM is the policy plan is up here at the high level, and then the PFM gets all the way down to the bricks and mortar on the ground. So that's just a little bit of context of where we're working. This is the timeline for the overall policy plan. We started this in December of 2022. We've had some staff turnover during that time, and so we've had to pull ourselves together again. But we've been working on some outreach and having some meetings with Planning Commission and with the board and with some subcommittees of the board. We've done an initial round of outreach, which was very general and just talking on a very general scale about the policy plan update. We're doing these focused topic meetings to dig in just a little bit more to be able to talk to people and collect ideas from people specifically on the different topics that we're talking about. And then moving forward, we're doing some background research at the moment. We'll be starting to write. No one has really written anything yet, any proposals or language for anyone to review yet, but that'll be coming early next year. And then the idea is at about this time next year to have a final proposal that's moving forward through the Planning Commission and the board for approval support. So in Fairfax County, when we talk about equity specifically, when we're working with the policy plan update, as I discussed earlier, the direction from the board is to update the policy plan specifically because we have a new strategic plan in Fairfax County. We have the one with Fairfax policy. And other policies and updates that have been going on. There's a lot of environmental policy work that has gone on that needs to be incorporated in the policy plan, for example. The one Fairfax policy is the county's policy that commits Fairfax County to considering equity in the creation and implementation of county policy and to intentionally, comprehensively, and systematically identify and address barriers to and gaps in opportunity, and to intentionally and strategically direct resources to fill the gaps. And so Fairfax County's defined equitable community development as a place where all people live in communities of opportunity with the ability to engage fully in decisions that affect their lives and neighborhoods. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that and dissect it a little bit, but I just wanted to point out a little bit of the framework under which we as staff are working. So we have the strategic plan, the one Fairfax policy, and then we also have something called the COG Equitable Development Principles. COG is the Regional Council of Governments, and so it's a body that has a board that members of our board sit on the COG board, as well as members from Arlington and Alexandria and Montgomery County and the region, and COG has a number of groups working on a regional. They do a lot of transportation planning, a lot of housing work. COG and COG also came together to support, and which included two of our board members who supported. They adopted the Council of Governments Equitable Development Principles, and these are the 10 principles that they adopted. You'll notice they run the gamut of things related to development, economic mobility, displacement, affordable housing, transportation, healthy and safe communities, environmental justice. And so we use these as a guide also in thinking about how we're putting equity and incorporating equity into the comp plan. So when I refer to the strategic plan, the county adopted a strategic plan and has been updating the strategic plan every year and has been producing annual reports. And the way that the One Fairfax policy was incorporated into the strategic plan is is um, they refer to equity as the super driver of the strategic plan, and the way that equity is operationalized in the strategic plan is through this idea of promoting access to opportunity. And so this is the approach in the strategic plan, these 4 approaches to opportunity, which is understanding opportunity and vulnerability, which is using data and tools. There have been several tools and data that have been developed by the team that works on One Fairfax. You'll see on the left here is a dashboard that they've created, the Communities of Opportunity dashboard, that takes into account multiple data points to create a high-level map. It's a census tract level and block level map of Fairfax County and what they consider high and low opportunity within the county. After this presentation, there are links to, for example, the One Fairfax page where this access to these maps are available to explore on your own and to look at the data. And so we'll have those links for you later. So understanding opportunity and vulnerability, targeting interventions to build opportunity, targeting interventions to connect to opportunity, and then encouraging the development of an inclusive economy. The policy plan touches all facets of this type of access to opportunity, the way it's defined in the strategic plan. We certainly focus, I think, on the first 3 in our little world of corner of the county, but certainly all 4 of them are related to land use and development. So you'll hear me talk about access to opportunity as we move forward, and that's really one big way we're thinking about incorporating equity into the policy plan and into the different elements of the policy plan. So just a couple of examples from the strategic plan that apply to some of the work that we're doing, the land use. I've just picked out a couple of few sections here. There's a land use element of the policy plan, and our strategic plan, an example of something in a strategic plan that applies to land use is this. The land use policies really outline the long-term strategy for growth in the county. And an example of guidance from the strategic plan related to land use is this: economic opportunity, which is using data disaggregated by population and place to promote and encourage land development so that investment in communities connects people to opportunity and mitigates residential and commercial displacement. And so we are working in the background to try to figure out what that means on the ground in terms of land use policy. So that's an example of the guidance that the strategic plan is giving us. Oh, this button doesn't work. Okay. Some more guidance that is coming into play is related to transportation. Here are just a few. There's lots of guidance in the strategic plan for transportation. I've pulled out a few. The first one related to a healthy community. There will be a new healthy community. I'm actually not sure of the title, but a health section of the policy plan, either healthy communities or just health. So I pulled out this guidance from the strategic plan of integrate considerations of health, well-being, and equity into the development, implementation, and evaluation of land use, transportation, and housing policies and ordinances. And then you can see other guidance related to transportation, which is safe and accessible transportation options with a focus on equitable access, for residents facing economic, health, housing, and other challenges. And so you see the this access to opportunity idea being emphasized over and over in our strategic plan. And finally, expand the Fairfax County Active Transportation Plan to prioritize the quality and consistency of neighborhood connectivity and select implementation areas based on equity and health measures. The county has an ongoing active transportation planning process happening at the moment, and so this is just another thing from the strategic plan that we are trying to put into action. And the final example is just from for parks, specifically the Parks Department has developed the Parks Recreation Open Space Access Strategy, which is, we call it PROSA for short. And they have developed their own index to understand where in the county the greatest park needs are. And they are using that to take into consideration also like population density, to figure out where they are serving their residents and where they need to improve. One notable piece of the process strategy, for example, is their commitment to 10-minute access to parks as a goal in the county. And that doesn't mean like as a crow flies, like a straight line. That means, you could live right next to a park, but maybe the access to the park, maybe the main sidewalk or driveway or path into the park is maybe on the other side of the park from where you are. And so they're trying to think about access on all parts of their parks to really commit themselves to the 10-minute access to parks. And so so that's an example of parks, how parks is taking the One Fairfax policy and putting it into action in their own departmental strategy. I want to have a discussion. I'm actually going to move just to talk about future meetings that are coming up, and then I'll come back and then we can have some discussion questions. And so those are just some examples for you all to think about in terms of equity in the policy plan, and I'm happy to have more discussion just so that you know these are the ongoing meetings that are happening related to the different topics. Equity is tonight. There's a lot more meetings to come. We've had one meeting earlier this month during the day. It was also virtual. And then these are the upcoming meetings. There's also our staff have been attending various meetings like farmers markets. We've been to a couple of school open houses, I believe, some events, some weekend events that the county has sponsored, different events like in Annandale, the Annandale Civic Space we've attended, and some other meetings. And so this is just the list of the virtual online meetings to attend coming up. And I just wanted to point out the introduction meetings that are coming up, which I think are important. And of course, they're all important. There's all a lot of information to absorb. And then we'll get to this later. These are just the contact information. And so since we have such a small group, I'm going to, I think, try to stop sharing here. Here we go. Stop presenting. Yeah, there we go. I just want to stop presenting since we have a small group to be able to have more of a conversation, and for me to be able to answer any questions you might have or thoughts you have, or questions about the presentation. If there's something you didn't understand or it's too obscure or something, I'm happy to talk through anything and to talk about how the policy plan, what it means, what it looks like when it's in action. And so so I'll open up the floor if you want to. I was thinking maybe. Yeah. Okay. So I was thinking maybe if you're comfortable introducing yourself or why you're interested or why you attended tonight, I'd love to be able to connect with you on that. if you're willing. I don't want to make anyone introduce themselves, but if you're willing, I'm happy to have a conversation. Since we have such a small group, I think it's an opportunity to be able to do that more. So I'm not. Go
I'll
ahead.
introduce myself. Yeah.
Hi. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Glenna Tinney. I live in Kingstown.
Okay.
Um, and I am the tree commissioner for Franconia District.
Oh, okay.
So I was appointed by Supervisor Lusk. Um, and so you know, I'm getting the lay of the land
Hmm.
basically on, various kind of in various areas and issues. So I'm interested in land use, obviously. But I'm interested in equity. My background is I'm a
Uh,
social worker.
oh,
So
okay.
I'm a social worker, and
Yeah.
I really care about the whole question of equity. And one of the things I know that has come up previously around parks was people having to pay to get in to
Mm,
parks, which is an issue. And I'm not sure if that's being addressed in the park section. I mean, it's great to have a 10-minute access to parks, but everybody can't afford necessarily to pay to use the parks. So
yeah.
I think that is an equity issue. Um, I'm looking at the tree canopy in the Franconia district, trying to put that together with vulnerable areas, trying to see kind of where we are, in terms of having an adequate tree canopy and where we might need to plant trees in this district. But tree canopy is an issue throughout the whole county as well.
Mm,
And McLean has a lot of trees, but maybe other areas in the county don't have as many trees. So, that tree cover, the heat island effect, all of those kind of things are part of the equity and
yeah.
opportunity, access to opportunity to have cleaner air and,
Right.
cooler temperatures and those kind of things. So that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
And that's kind of who I am. So that was long. Sorry.
No, thank you, Glenna. And just for a couple things to let you know, there was an interesting last week. There was an interesting. This is kind of geeky, but there's an interesting committee meeting actually last week at the board. It was I think it was actually the Health and Human Services Committee meeting, but the second half of that meeting was the Parks Department coming to the board to talk about fees and some of the study that they've been doing. I don't know if it's done yet, but some of the study that they've been doing about the cost of access to, especially some of the rec centers. Uh,
Mhm.
uh, and so um, maybe afterwards I'll send you the link to that meeting. But there was a whole presentation on it. I think it's very much. I don't want to speak for parks, but I think it's very much on the something they're looking at and understanding in terms of as a barrier to access to parks is some of the fees and costs for some of the services. So I appreciate that you um, recognize that and brought that up, and I'll pass that on to the parks people to support them.
Okay.
And
Sounds good.
then another thing, just as part of that, just so you know, I mean, and you maybe know already as part of your work, but the county did an urban heat island study, and there's a map available um, of the county that shows like the hot parts of the county basically. And so that those maps are actually being incorporated into some of the data that we use through the One Fairfax policy in the that community opportunity dashboard that I flashed on the screen there for a minute incorporates, for example, that data into the analysis of the county in terms of vulnerability. And so it's not everything. I don't personally know the latest in terms of tree canopy um, studies. I know there was, but anyway, I just wanted to point that out, and so I
There is
you
a tree
mentioning that.
canopy study that was just
Yeah.
finished,
Oh,
but
great.
it's not out for prime time yet.
Oh, okay.
So it's
Yeah.
still being kind of looked at
Uh huh.
because there are some limitations to it.
Oh, okay.
but at some point that report will be
Yeah.
out.
Oh,
When
okay.
the county will decide how they want to release it, and
Yeah.
all of that. So
Right. Oh, okay. All right. Well, I learned something too. Great. I didn't know that was ongoing. Um, anyone else want to
I'm
Yeah.
jump in?
I'm
Yeah.
Helen Cole,
Hi,
and
Helen.
I'm with the Commission for Women, and I dropped
Okay.
in. I waved to you, Alyssa.
Are you
earlier.
both on the Commission for Women? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I kind of dropped in because I thought we were going to talk about updates to the equity policy plan. But it sounds like this is just an overview kind of all of the plans that you're undertaking. So is this, are you updating the strategic plan and One Fairfax? What exactly are you doing?
So the strategic plan is its own world of a document that is at a higher level than me, right? It's like at the county executive level. And the equity is incorporated into the strategic plan in
Mhm.
various ways. The One Fairfax policy is a policy, for example, that is incorporated in the strategic plan. And also sort of at the high level, I would say. And then the One Fairfax policy has not yet been incorporated into our work, which is I would say, like a level below. Like the strategic plan is here, the One Fairfax policy is here, and we're down here working on the comprehensive policy plan.
Who's
Uh,
we? Who's
we
we?
being the Department of Planning and Development, so the land use
Okay.
people, the land use people. And so, we're the land use people. We're also the transportation people. There's some parks people. Um, and so our work, when we are working with developers or development in the county or thinking about the future of land use in the county, that's our world. For example, we don't do, there's a whole section of the county that does like human services work, right? Which
Mhm.
is, all interconnected, of course, but, we're focused on the land use. And so the strategic plan and the One Fairfax policies up here, our policy plan hasn't yet incorporated those and brought those into the policy plan. And so that's what we're trying to do in terms of when we're updating the policy plan to incorporate the strategic plan, to incorporate One Fairfax, and some other miscellaneous policies that have been incorporated over the years. So
Into the land use
yeah,
plan.
that's right.
Gotcha.
That's right. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So we're still kind of at a general level, and so our focus, Lee and I, um, and some other people are focused specifically on equity, and the way we're looking at equity in the policy plan is by incorporating it into those discrete sections. And so the reason I talk about equity in parks and then equity in land use and equity and what, transportation, and there are others too, equity and environment. We're looking at, instead of equity being a standalone thing, we want equity to be part of each one of those elements. And so that's what we're working on, which is why I showed examples from each of those sections. It's trying to bring the high level down into our land use work. So
Gotcha. Thank you.
yeah, thanks for the question.
Yeah, so I'll introduce myself. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. My name is Alyssa. I am the chair of the Fairfax County Commission for Women. Helen is one of our vice chairs. Really excited to be here tonight. So I'm actually, instead of my question to you is, what are you hoping to hear from the community tonight and through these sessions? And really, what perspective are you hoping to get out of this? And that might
Well,
help me. That might help me either
yeah,
ask some questions or
yeah.
give some suggestions.
I think, what I'm looking for is for uh, people, number one, to sort of kind of know where we are and what we're doing, right? And why a policy plan, it's a little bit hard to wrap your head around sometimes, right? Because
Mhm.
it's kind of this big idea. And often, in our work, often when we hear from people, it's like something's going in down the block
Mhm.
and, we're worried about it. And that's when we hear about people, right? But our work, well, always, our work is applying the policy that lives in the county to that development down the block, right? And so we're working at this level. And it's hard sometimes to get and to be able to have a conversation about that, because it's sometimes it's not very tangible.
Right.
And when we work at a policy level, sometimes, we don't, especially in land use and development, you don't see the outcome of some of this for sometimes 10, 20 longer years. And so what I'm looking is just to bring some people along on this journey with me and to think about, like, what does it mean? Access to opportunity is really the framework that's been outlined for me in the strategic plan. What does that mean in terms of land use? What does that mean in terms of environment? Everyone has the right, to have a cool walk down the sidewalk shaded by trees, for example. So, and that's sort of an easy example, right? Like, we know that there's parts of the county that have more tree cover than other parts of the county. And so we have some policies related to tree cover, but when we talk about equity, we want to try to use data to understand what parts of the county need it more than others. And so that's kind of where we are at this point in the policy plan process. I'm looking for partners to think about this with me as we move forward, because there's a few examples out there in the world of comprehensive planning. There's some examples related to access to opportunity, but it's, quite frankly, it's different everywhere. Like, what does that look like? What does that look like in Fairfax County? And so, I'm hoping to, and I've had several conversations about that as we move forward. And so, so it's kind of big ideas, and it feels very general, I know, but I've had some good conversations with people as they're thinking about, like, what they're seeing, in their little part of whatever they're doing in the county. So, does that help? I don't know if that gets at it a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm not so familiar with
Yeah.
land use policy specifically, and so I'm coming to
Yeah.
and starting to wrap my head around it. I will say, I will echo all sentiments on tree canopy cover. I live in an area that's being developed, and it is very sunny outside, very hot
Right.
sidewalks.
Especially in the summer. Yeah, especially
But
in the summer.
in terms of women, and girls specifically, and which is who we advocate for, and what we advocate on behalf of, I'm sure that there is a lot of overlap here between land use and how it may specifically affect women and girls. We just did a study earlier this year, we partnered with the University of Virginia, the Board of Supervisors, many other partners worked on this study to put out gains, gaps, and goals. And we did a county-wide study on women and girls in Fairfax County. We covered 3 key areas. However, there are many other areas that we didn't get to in that study. But themes that have come up are around work-life balance, transportation, and women's work. And I think that also plays into safety, right, on public transportation in our public parks, at our bus stops, etc. And so when thinking about land use and when thinking about, public parks and playgrounds, etc., I definitely think that there is strong overlap here, and in terms of other areas of land uses as well.
Thanks for that. What is that report called? I remember seeing it. I confess I haven't read the whole thing.
It is called Gains, Gaps, and Goals.
Gains,
I want to say it's on the Department of Family Services website.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, but there are conversations that we've had over the last 6 months relating to, I think the 3 key factors we looked at was women's economic status, work-life balance, and mental health. That sounds right. Or health in general. Health in general is what we looked at.
Yeah.
And so all of those 3 things, I'm sure, are related to equity, but they're also, I think, related to land use. And, like, can you get out of your own house? Can you walk to, the places that you need to get to do you feel safe on public transportation to get to where you need to go, etc. One of the more interesting findings, there were many, but one of the more interesting findings that we found, or more specifically that the University of Virginia found, was that women are more likely to suffer from certain types of chronic ailments, so such as arthritis and chronic conditions, versus men in Fairfax County. We don't really know what the cause of that or the correlation of that is, but it is definitely probably something that we will continue to look into. And I, from a land use perspective, I don't know how much overlap that is, but it's an interesting finding, so I thought I'd share.
I mean, it's interesting sometimes when you dig into it to, it's not all land use related, but some of it probably is, right? There's historically our transportation system was set up about getting husbands into DC for work.
Right.
And didn't really take into account women working and picking up kids after school and, going to the grocery and all these other like little trips, like these community level trips, for example.
Right.
That's something that was historically overlooked. And that means like in the data about transportation and some of the standards set up for transportation, often it wasn't set up to account for, much of the, like sort of household based work often. And so there's lots to it. Thanks, Alicia. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
Larry, do you want to?
Sure. So my name is Larry Zaragoza. I chair the Environmental Quality Advisory Council, and we work closely with the Tree Commission. As a matter of fact, the chair of the Tree Commission was there with me at our September meeting where we were talking about trees and trash in the beat-out right-of-way and asking if we could do more about getting shade, getting more trees in the beat-out right-of-way. And I also chair the Mount Vernon Environment and Recreation Committee, Mount Vernon Council of Citizens Association. So that's a community group. And just by way of background, I worked for EPA for over 40 years. And one of the areas that I was involved in was environmental justice and shaping some of their policies and development of EJ screen. I was more of a reviewer than anything. But when at EPA, we were very strong, maybe not by choice as far as I was concerned, but on strategic planning. And so I kind of have a mindset about how everything should be set up with goals and objectives and activities, and see how they all fit together. And so I've said, this is my third meeting in the last 2 weeks, and they have been very, very different. And I think they've been different. They start out with the same slide, with the same direction by the board, but the way that they differ is they differ in specificity in terms of what you're looking for. So I really like the transportation meeting. So in the transportation meeting, they talked about metrics. And so one of the things that's missing here is I didn't see any metrics, and because I didn't see any metrics, it's awfully general. And so when you have a meeting like this, and actually environment was very similar. So for environment, they just listened in to what people had to say, but it felt a little bit like the strategic planning meetings, which were, there was a lot of energy behind those, and they did a survey and I participated in it, but then there was no feedback on it. And one of the things that I would be concerned about is the comprehensive plan is a really important document that guides decision-making, particularly when an applicant has to come in for a special exception or anything like that, which is really, and you know this so much better than I do. So if I mistake something,
go ahead.
Correct me.
Go ahead.
And so it seems to me like it's really important to get this right, and it will guide the direction. And I think it's important that it be clear that we're getting outcomes that are important to the community. Alyssa's comment is one that really resonates with me. I was in a community just this weekend, and I was talking with some folks, and a man told me, he said, this county is changing. My nephew was thinking about becoming a police officer. I am arguing with him not to do that because I don't think it's safe. I think that, I look at what the neighborhood here is like, and 16 years ago, it was safe. I don't think it's safe anymore, is what he told me. And so that's a big deal. And so that community was one which is not as well off as some. So I guess I would really love to see more in terms of metrics. I would like to see more in terms of how all these plans fit together. I would like to see more in terms of the goals. In some of the cases, it looks like the things that are being discussed are outcomes that are important to or resonate with county staff. For example, in one of the meetings, there was one of the areas of focus was site design. So if you take a community member, site design is something that they aren't going to be expert in. They care about quality of life. They care about safety. They care about access to transportation. Is it walkable? Do they have transportation options? But it seems like we should have overall goals that people can relate to. And I don't see that as something that's common right now. And I apologize to you if I sound like I'm complaining, because that's not my intent. My intent is to kind of maybe get some reaction from you, because if these are things that you can address, I think they would go a long way. I really think that the safety issues, the quality of life, the environment. Obviously, I care about the environment, but all these things are ways which I kind of grapple with and ask, how can we do better? And that's kind of where I come from. And I can give you lots of specifics on things, but I worry that I would go on too long.
Well, we've got 15 minutes, but no, Larry, I appreciate it on a number of levels. I'll tell you sort of where we are and what's going on with that right now. In terms of the reason I sort of brought up the introduction is because that's part of where the goals are being worked on and developed, right? And so that the goals and the land use vision isn't complete yet. This set of meetings has been a very initial look, and I know transportation has a lot of metrics. My stuff in the background, it's something I'm actually actively working on right now in terms of research and whatnot. And so it's just not, I'm sort of starting from scratch here, where transportation has like reams and reams of data that they can access pretty quickly. And so there is a lot of data related to equity in the county, and some of the tools that we've been developing at the county, we're still working on. There's another tool that I'm expecting to come out near the end of the year related to displacement. It's like a displacement risk index, for example. I don't have it yet. And so it's something I think that's evolving over time. So I appreciate that. And I haven't seen all of the other presentations myself, honestly. I've seen a few of them, but not all of them. And so I appreciate that comment, and I'm gonna talk to people about it. But you're right, not everything has metrics set because of where we are in the process. And so I appreciate that. What you were saying about the goals is something that's evolving, and something that actually this Thursday, what is the date today? It's the 21st. Actually, on Thursday, the the person that's leading up the land use vision section of the policy plan is going to the Planning Commission. There's a subcommittee meeting at the Planning Commission that will be televised, that where he'll be talking about the land use vision with the Planning Commission. And so it's a little bit of an ongoing process at the moment. And so this set of meetings is just by timing, for whatever reason, is kind of, it's all sort of happening at the same time. And so I appreciate that. And there needs to be some consistency, I think, between the topics and the goals that should be consistent across the presentations. I mean, you know, I agree with that. And so I appreciate that. Thursday night, I want to say 7 p.m. probably. Let me make a note to myself about that link also. Sorry, Leah's not here anymore, so I have to take my own notes. So, there, okay. But I appreciate that, Larry, and I'm happy to talk in the weeds and details anytime, any place. And so.
So let me ask you another question.
Yeah.
So given where this process is, it sounds like all this information is being collected, and then you're going to go into the writing phase. And one of the fears that I kind of have is, you're doing your research now, and it's not even clear from some of the topics what it is that that's going to be come out as a recommendation, for example. And even if you have a topic, and you have you end up with a recommendation. One of the things that you could do, and this is something I've heard from some people, and I don't, I'm not saying this is what's happening here, but you could say that you had all these meetings, you collected this input, and then you could come out with a particular recommendation. But unless you discuss those recommendations and have a meaningful exchange and possibly go back to the drawing board and totally rework it, you may not get the recommendations that the communities want. And in my view, that's really important. And the other thing is, that's also really tough to do. But I think it's worth it. Part of it is, I think about this process has been going on for a year now. And so I was kind of under the impression that the major goals and thinking would have been worked out before having these meetings. And so that is part of my confusion. And it actually is good for me to hear what you had to say, because it suggests to me that the county's still open and flexible on all this stuff. Is that a fair interpretation?
It is a very extremely fair interpretation. Yeah. I mean, you know, what I guess get asked often is like, have we written anything? And you know, the answer is no. Like, we haven't. No one has like written. There's no like draft transportation version floating around or something to be edited at this point. And that's true for everyone. We're trying to talk to people in lots of different corners at the moment, and so there's we're not down the road of something being written in stone and trying to like edit at this point.
So one more question.
Yeah, that's fine. Glenn, I'll go to Glenna, and Larry, we can talk more. We'll come back. Go ahead, Glenna.
No, I was just curious, the slide that you had that had listed all the upcoming meetings.
Yeah.
So there was one there's one tomorrow that's called Community Health and Human Services.
Yeah.
But there's also one on the 28th called Community Health and Human Services. And then there's one on land use that is Thursday. And then there's land use focused meeting on November 6th. There's 2 introduction meetings. So are these going to be the same meetings?
Yeah, they're the same presentations.
Times?
Yeah, we've been trying to do them during the day, like in the middle of the day, and at night, or a couple of them at night and one during the day. And so they've been the same presentation. I mean, different attendees like yourselves, but exact same presentation. And then, so for example, for this meeting, the previous video is available. Like you could go back and watch that video if you wanted to. So same presentation, different conversation in that meeting. But they when the people who were scheduling the meetings were we wanted to do dual, one or two at least meetings at different times of the day.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Back to Larry. Go ahead.
So just to comment on that.
Yeah.
In the transportation meeting, they said they were going to take on certain topics in the meeting last week, and that they would be taking on other topics that would be different in the latter meeting, if I understood them correctly. So
okay.
But I guess the thing that's really on my mind is how can we help you? What can we do? Because I think that I personally think if you had a piece of paper out there that had specifics that would make a difference, I think you would have gotten a significant turnout.
Yeah.
And the very general nature of these discussions kind of makes it hard to react to, because you sit in a discussion, you hear a presentation, and then the other thing is you don't know what kind of feedback you're going to get. And I think that if I feel so much more reward if I go to a meeting and I provide feedback and they circle back and they show me how my input has been incorporated, or how something else took precedent, and then it makes sense. And if you could build agreement that that's what we should be doing, I think that's really powerful. And that doesn't seem to be happening yet.
You're right. It's a good read. The staff have been instructed for these first couple of meetings to have introductory meetings to the topics. And so you're not wrong. And it's the way the timing works, at least for my work, is that there's work going on related to access to opportunity in the background. And it's just the way the timing is at the moment. But you're right. And I feel similarly in many ways, to be honest. And so I hope that moving forward, as I'm able to work a little bit more specifically on access to opportunity and all these different topics, that we can really be able to dig in. And I hope to have conversations, and as many of these conversations that I need to have with whatever groups. And so, we had a different set of people at the last meeting, and then I've had just a ton of phone calls from different people interested in different topics. I can tell you the big topic that people are interested in, or that we've heard a lot about so far, is displacement, commercial, residential displacement, and cultural displacement in the county. That's been a big topic that is coming up. And so, like I said, that's like an active subject of research in the county, not just within DPD, but in some other departments also. And so we're trying to kind of bring it together under some umbrella and a policy that'll perhaps let us look in displacement and to come up with tools for displacement, for example, while the county is actively looking at it, because that's not just a land use issue, it's an economic issue. There's so many things related. It's a big topic, for example. And so that's actually been sort of the major discussion to this point related to equity in the comp plan so far. I mean, many of the other topics that you've all mentioned tonight related to tree canopy and coverage, and heat island, and access to transportation has come up a lot. The safety issue has come up quite a bit in the meetings that I've had so far. And so those are really the topics that we've been looking at pretty hard.
Can I also comment that when I think about your environmental justice communities, generally I think of them as often being lower income, perhaps minority groups, which maybe even have challenges with English. And I think if you look at their hierarchy of needs, it's, they probably would love to have trees and all these other things, but I think that, displacement is probably a big one. Transportation and getting around is probably a big one. I mean, you I think it's challenging to get that group because they might be working two jobs, and it's just hard to get them to even show up to a meeting. I know that my experience in trying to interact with them has been is challenging sometimes, because the other thing is they aren't going to want to show up unless they think they're going to get some kind of result, because their time is just too limited with their different obligations. And so we need to make the process more accessible to them, and that was one of your goals that you talked about today. And I find that to be a challenging thing to do.
Yes.
So when you're talking about the future, you're not talking about adjusting stuff that's like already in place. Because I know some of the supervisors have already had community meetings about future plans for buildings that are going up and roads that are going to be cut through certain communities and stuff. So all of that is in stone already. So we're not talking about stuff that's already on the planning block. You're talking about from now on in the future, you're coming up with goals for different things.
Yeah,
like
that's
like Larry, is talking about displacement. So that's what you're into the future now, because my thing would be stop building everything, because I live in Reston, and right now it's scorched earth here. Every single new townhouse that's going up is exactly the same. And then when they finish building 250 in a square acre, they put these middling trees there that are going to take 20 years to grow. And I know, Glenna, you're talking about tree canopy. Well, that's not going to happen here for another 35 years, the lushness of it. But Michelle, you're talking about the future, with planning. Oh, so what can we do about the future? Okay, I got it.
However, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no kid. I was just going to jump in. I'm happy to hang out longer. I just want to be where it's 8 o'clock, and so if anyone had
That's fine.
something to do at 8 o'clock, I just wanted to give you permission to. Okay, just all right. Sorry, Gladys, go ahead.
Well,
Okay, thanks, Alyssa.
With what your name's not there, so
Helen.
I'm sorry.
I don't know why I come up as male verification all the time. It's Helen.
Okay. Well, I'm just following up on what Helen was just saying. I mean, what you're doing is not going to change, or is it going to change existing policies around land use, around tree canopy, around development, and what they're required to do, what VDOT it should or shouldn't do when it just decimates entire forests in order to do some road initiative that they're doing. So all of those things are currently in place. So there are a lot of policies and rules and regulations and all those kind of things. Is this document that you're working on going to change those existing policies that are in place for land use, for tree canopies and all those kind of things? I guess I don't have clarity around that.
It's there's probably a few different answers to your question. I'll start with, there's something the county has. It's called the concept for future development, and the concept for future development is a very broad look at the county that says, very generally speaking, build housing near transit, or transportation corridors, for example. And that's really the big concept for the county. that concept is carried forward in policies we have at the county, and also like area plans that we have at the county. Like we have a commitment. We're building in Tysons, like that. The concept for future development says, we don't have an there is no height limit in Tysons. It's just whatever the market will bear, for example, and that's the land use policy of the county. I can tell you that that concept isn't changing as part of this. There's likely will be new policies. There's probably some streamlining of some policies, some new policies related to, for example, for equity, related to health. I think in the land use section, there'll be something related to displacement, I imagine. I can't speak for the land use team specifically. I don't know exactly what they're thinking. There's probably tweaks going on. The county's not throwing out all land use policy and starting from scratch. So you can probably still expect to see development along major corridors, for example. And so there's kind of some major concepts that aren't going to change as part of this process, but there can be some new policies, probably some tweaks to some old policies. There's kind of some background streamlining stuff. The policy plan has 13 appendices to it, and so we're trying to get rid of the appendices and incorporate into the policy plan what belongs in the policy plan, and then separate. Some of those appendices are very process oriented, and so we're trying to separate that a little bit. So there's some kind of background streamlining work happening also. And so in terms of the equity work and policies like access to safe transportation or safe and accessible transportation, using data more so to understand like where exactly are there tweaks needed in the county. If a couple of weeks ago, Chairman McKay actually had a good example when we have a chief equity officer, Carla Bruce, who retired recently, and there was a proclamation, and all the supervisors talked about Carla and praised her work. And Chairman McKay had a story about a bus stop that got placed in a neighborhood where the data showed that this particular neighborhood didn't have very good access to transportation. And so there was a tweak in the policy related to transportation placement. There was a bus stop placed, and he said there was, he tells a story about a woman who came to him and was like so grateful for this one bus stop because it changed her life. Like she gets home from work earlier, and she she was able to see her kids at a different, earlier in the day, and it was a major impact on her life. And so taking equity into account for some of the kind of the rote processes that we have is something that we're hoping to do with this process. And so I can speak specifically to the equity part with the policy and how we're trying to use data to be more specific with our work and to provide opportunity where maybe there isn't any, to really drill down a little bit more. And so, sorry, that's a long way to answer your question, but it's a story that stuck with me actually, because sometimes you get kind of in this and then you forget that like this is kind of obscure high level policy stuff. You do see it on the ground. From time to time, it's hard to see the connection sometimes. But another presentation that I give talks about policy and the new Mount Vernon, the government center, the new combined government center that's down south. It's I can't remember the name of it now. The is it the old Mount Vernon High School that's becoming like a joint. There's like several different uses that are going into there, several different government uses that are going into there. I'm sorry, it's been a while since I've given that presentation, but I have a presentation that shows like, oh, that happened, but we have a policy at the county now, which is fairly, I mean, it's a few years old now, but it's fairly new, that says, look at everything as a joint use opportunity. Like, where can we combine uses in the county to better use our funds, but also provide services where they need to be. So the new Lorton Community Center that combines a library, the food pantry, and then the community center all together, that was a result of some high level policy that says, look at combining as many, uses where it makes sense in some places. And so now staff, when we're looking at public facilities, we look for that. We look for where can we combine uses that make sense for a community in different places. And so that's an example of this high level kind of obscure policy that has come into effect on the ground. Not to mention other policies that come into play with some of those, like the green building policies or stormwater policies, et cetera.
Thank you. And thank you for doing this. Thank you for the information. I do appreciate it. It's a lot, I mean, there's a lot, obviously a lot of moving parts to all of this. And I hear your area is equity, and it's good that you are trying to weave that in throughout and not just have some separate section on equity, but it's kind of incorporated into everything. So I think that is important to do that.
Yeah.
I appreciate you tonight. And then I'll do you need me to, maybe I'll put in the, do you have access to the chat after this? I was going to put my email address in the chat for you all too. I'm happy to
we do have access to the chat.
Okay, good. Okay, so there's my email address, and I'm happy to have further conversations with anyone. And I appreciate you coming tonight, and I hope we can have further conversations as we move forward.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Right,
Have a
good
good
night.
night, everybody.
All right.
You too.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
We appreciate it.
Yep.
Bye.